Please be aware the stories, theories, reenactments, and language of this podcast are of an adult nature and can be disturbing, frightening, and in some cases, offensive. Listener discretion is therefore advised. There is very adult content ahead, and you have been warned. Welcome, heathens! Welcome to the world of the weird and unexplained. I'm your host, Nicole Delacroix, and joining us will be my dear friend and fabulous co-host, Bhrody Faye, although not for this episode because he has the crud again, and his voice is not working. But for future episodes, together, we will be bringing you stories about the weird, wonderful, unexplained, eerie, scary, and downright unbelievable. There will be tales of ghosts, murder, supernatural beings, and unexplained mysteries. So sit back, grab your favorite drink, relax, and prepare to be transported to today's Dark Enigma. On today's Dark Enigma, we're going to be jumping into an unexplained and unsolved murder. Today, we're going to be looking at the death of a man who served under 3 U.S. presidents and had an illustrious career in politics. Yet, when we dive in, you'll see the truly bizarre circumstances around this poor man's passing. Now, normally we have a drinking game, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't really come up with one for this one. So, every time I say unsolved, that'll be a shot, and you can pick whichever alcohol you feel you want to drink this time. And for a double shot, anytime I do a Scooby-Doo moment or act really stupid, oh wait, that'll be all the time, never mind, we'll do Scooby-Doo moments. So if I say zoinks or chinkies, then it's a double shot. Alright, so let's jump into it. Now, there have been many deaths which have rocketed into the stratosphere of strangeness and unsolved mysteries. These are the people who have left corpses behind, but few answers to how or why they met their demise. Indeed, upon leaving behind puzzling clues that only seem to deepen the enigma of their death. One such death was that of a highly regarded eminent figure of government in the United States, whose bizarre and sudden death has left in its wake a swirling quagmire of baffling clues, odd evidence, and creepy, inexplicable security footage, none of which have led to any solution to the persistent conundrum. It's an unsolved crime that has gone on to be hotly debated and discussed to this very day, and with which we are left scratching our heads as to what happened. By all accounts, John Wheeler III was an incredibly well-respected member of the U.S. government. He graduated from West Point, Harvard, and Yale, and had an impressive resume to say the very least. Throughout his career, he served as a decorated Army officer, a Washington consultant in many capacities, a lawyer, a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, a special assistant to the Secretary of the Air Force, as well as serving in the office of the Secretary of Defense as a presidential aide throughout the terms of 3 separate presidential administrations, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush, as well as the outspoken CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and also holding the title of Special Assistant to the Acting Secretary of the Air Force for Installations, Logistics, and Environment, and most recently as a military consultant for the defense contractor, the MITRE Corporation, which deals primarily in cyber defense. Some of his great accomplishments, including getting the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall built and penning an in-depth manual on the effects of biological and chemical weapons, which he was against and strongly proposed be pursued with the utmost restraint. Despite this powerful clout within Washington and the respect and admiration he garnered from his colleagues and peers, practically a national hero of sorts, there seems to have been a dark shadow following him. On December 31st of 2010, Wheeler was found dead, his body being dumped from a garbage truck at the Cherry Island landfill. He was 66 years old. It was a shocking discovery that took the media by storm at the time, and it was immediately intensely investigated as to how this well-respected figure had ended up sprawled out in a garbage dump. The investigation would go on to paint a very odd, ominous, and unsettling picture of the days leading up to his death. it was found that Wheeler had displayed some rather uncharacteristically bizarre behavior in the days leading up to the discovery of his body. Wheeler's neighbor claimed that during the week before his death, a television had been turned up to full volume at his residence at all hours of the day, even when it seemed that nobody was even home, and that Wheeler himself was practically never even seen during this time. On December 28th, Wheeler was seen getting off an Amtrak train and looking decidedly spaced out and unhinged. Then, the following day, Wheeler was spotted wandering around the parking garage of the New Castle County Courthouse, looking disoriented and wearing a black suit with no tie and only one shoe. His face was described as looking flushed, and his movements seemed to be erratic and purposeless, as if he were drunk or drugged. And by the way, just so you know, I'll be posting footage inside the description so that you can go and watch the YouTube video yourself. It's bizarre. When he approached the parking attendant, Wheeler gave the bizarre excuse that he was warming up before paying his fee and leaving the garage, which was odd, considering his car wasn't even parked there, but rather at the train station several blocks away, where it would be found abandoned, gathering dust even after his death. The derailed Wheeler also claimed that his briefcase had been stolen, and he was very clear in insisting that he was not drunk. Perhaps he thought it seemed that he was coming across that way. On that same day, he allegedly wandered into a nearby pharmacy and asked for a ride, only to disappear when the pharmacist offered to call him a cab. Wheeler was seen again on the 30th in a similar perturbed and zombie-like state, this time at 10th and Orange Streets in Wilmington, Delaware, where he aimlessly walked about several office buildings, including that of the Mitre Corporation. In this case, he was again reported as looking confused and dazed, allegedly refusing help from passerbys, and this would be the last known sighting of him alive. CCTV footage from the parking garage before his death that was later uncovered underscored this striking bizarre behavior. And of course, like I said, there will be a link to the footage in the description so that you can see it for yourself. But in one piece of footage, Wheeler can be seen stumbling about and apparently talking to the attendant, the whole time acting very indecisively, as if he's not sure where he wants to go. He seems quite upset, jumpy, and disheveled, and is wearing only one shoe while holding the other, which appears to be ripped up for some reason, in his hand. As he staggers, sways, and stumbles about, at one point he even reaches out to steady himself against a wall, and it seems as though he's perhaps under the influence of something. In fact, when I watched it, I thought, is he drunk? Because he kind of seemed like he was. At the end of the video, he is about to take an exit door, but then suddenly whirls around to come back inside, at one point waving his arms up in the air and gesticulating for unknown reasons, and then taking an elevator instead. This is the last known footage of Wheeler alive, and it is so outlandish that it only makes things more mysterious rather than offering any real insight into what happened. As to the death itself, authorities almost immediately labeled it as a murder, saying later that he had died from blunt trauma to the back of the head. But the possible scene of the crime could not be located, and there was some confusion as to what had actually caused the fatal injury. All that could be ascertained for sure was that the truck that had dumped the body at the landfill had come from Newark, leading investigators to speculate that whoever had killed him had dumped his body there, after which it had made the journey to its final resting place at the Cherry Island landfill. There have been several theories as to what happened to Wheeler. One revolves around a dispute he had been embroiled in with one of his neighbors. A lawsuit, in fact, had been filed by Wheeler against his neighbor, Frank Marini, seemingly for the purpose of blocking his plans to build a building near his property that would obstruct his view, and making this all more ominous was that he was suspected of having perhaps even attempted arson against Marini. These neighbors reported that on December 28th, someone had tossed some smoke bombs into their home, which had burned the floor, and although there was no evidence as to who had thrown them, they strongly suspected that it had been Wheeler. There is also the spooky fact that shortly before his death, one of the buildings he was seen staggering around was the law firm handling the case. The idea here is that these neighbors took things a little bit too far in the feud and maybe had him killed. But there's very little evidence to support it, so we're still baffled. Then there's the theory that Wheeler had gotten in a little too deep in some government conspiracy and had been silenced. Supporting this is the fact that he had been working for the MITRE Corporation at the time and had allegedly just before his death become absolutely obsessed with cyber warfare, which he had come to believe the United States was woefully unprepared for. That he should come to this alarming conclusion at just around the time of his death has raised serious red flags and suggested that he had perhaps dug a little too far within the corporation and seen something that he wasn't supposed to. He is also believed to have been specifically working on detecting cyber intrusions and criminal activity on the nation's secured networks, meaning that he could have discovered something he was not meant to find that could have gone all the way to the upper echelons of the government, and thus posed the necessity for him to be taken out of the equation.